we'll get started soon. Thank you guys tapping in. We got a lot to talk about. Here we go. All right, so we might as well go ahead and start off with the news that dropped last night. We can go with that. Let me pull this up real quick. So basically, like yesterday, the federal court basically came out saying that Trump it doesn't have the power essentially to do these sweeping tariffs that he's been planning. Let me move this over somewhere so you guys can see. Dang, hold on. Come on now, be nice. So this happened yesterday after a little bit after market closed. And so after that happened, the market automatically kind of just went up a little bit in pre-market. Everybody's kind of celebrating that because tariffs do put a little bit of stress on the economy, especially while we're in a point where we're trying to lower inflation. That just makes things a little bit harder regarding that. One second. So they already had the market up, going up already. And then what made it even sweeter, well, I feel like, at least for the stock I'm watching, what really made us run up some more, we saw Tesla. One of the things that's been hurting Tesla the most is Elon, of course, talking too much. But aside from that, is that we have he was a part of Doge, and then basically a lot of companies you don't really want your leader involved too heavily in politics to where it negatively affects the stock. So I'm put up right now. It's Tesla, TSLA. But he just announced that he was stepping down from Doge, which we knew that was happening, but it seemed like it's been sooner than later. And actually, just a couple of days ago, he was talking about how he's going back to sleeping in his office. And the funny thing about that is that when Elon is sleeping in his office and he's just like completely locked in as an entrepreneur, like he does really well. Tesla has done really well every time he's like fully locked in on one thing and not trying to handle too many things at one time. So Tesla like went up a little bit overnight as well. We're at that 364 mark already in pre-market. So we're about like about 2% already pre-market. Which if we do maintain our bullishness, we have some GDP revisions dropping at 8:30, so in a couple minutes. But if we do remain bullish throughout the day, this can easily run. I really feel like we can definitely touch 380 today, potentially higher. And if you're already in my Discord, we already know we are still in TSLL calls, and that's just a play on Tesla, but it's a leverage stock essentially. So what I'll be looking for with Tesla, I use the 4 hours as my triggers. But first, so I'll go ahead and I'll mark out. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see. All right, here you go. To acquire a trigger for Tesla, it would actually be right at this. Let's see, at 364, and we're already above that. We're already triggering that in pre-market. So if we maintain that above, really above 365, that's a good psychological level. If we maintain above that, we easily can start heading towards 370, 380, and that's where real test has been overall for Tesla is around that 380 mark. Because typically once we break through that 380 mark, we typically head towards 400 already. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you what I look at first too. Is I turn on my extended trading hours and I always go down to the 15-minute time frame. This helps, especially if you're doing like gap ups or gap downs, but also just gives you some price targets to look at, especially if you don't understand like supply and demand zones as well. But one thing I like to go ahead and do is like I like to mark out my pre-market high and my pre-market low. This creates a good visualization for me. I trade the strat, which mainly focuses on price action, but I also like to do is just keep note because oftentimes when we mark out this pre-market high and pre-market low, when we see a break above or below these areas, that's typically when we see price to really start moving during market hours. Um, so I'm gonna turn that all back to the regular trading hours. I'll go back to the 4 hour time frame. And so you guys just get a good idea. Here we go. So we had this two down that we ended off on last night. So when we saw a break above this, the 364, let's say during market hours, we break above this. We know there's already a psychological level at 365, but we mark out that pre-market high. We know that's another target for us when we start to run, which is around 368.46. And so we can target that already. And of course, after that, it's around 370. I'm gonna go and do my extension on the daily. This will give me an even better idea of where we're headed to. But if you trade Tesla very frequently, you already know that 365 and 370, not as much, but 365 and 380 are like your biggest levels of like resistance that you typically deal with Tesla. Hold on, let's see. Get this framed up right. But my ultimate target for Tesla is 400, which we're quickly heading for. And I have my calls out to June 20th just to give myself some time. This is about the 50% mark on Tesla. But once we break 400, we really start moving back towards like some of our all-time highs, which actually is not too far off. Let me see. Hold on, data's about to drop pretty soon. We'll come back to this. Let me know if you have any questions, guys, or any stocks you want me to look at. I'll happily go over those. Let's see. So we're about to look at the GDP revisions. When we look at this, it's basically trying to get like the understanding of how the economy is feeling now. Like if there was is this really a big shift up or down as far as like what the GDP was? And we're in this kind of weird area like where bad GDP is considered good and good GDP can be kind of bad because everybody's really looking for the Fed to cut rates pretty soon in the market, and that's something that people are hoping for. Because when we cut rates, that's really when the money can start to flow in and get it going. Oh, we had PCE this morning too. Here, let me see. Pull this up. All right, so we had first quarter GDP came in at negative zero point 0.2, census negative 0.3. Hmm. So it was like a little bit higher than they were expecting, a little bit higher than what it was before. Oh, and actually, never mind. It's a little bit lower. My bad. jobs claims going up about 14K. That's showing that the economy is like weakening a little bit. It's not too bad, but continuing claims are going higher. So jobs claims revived 226K. It's nothing too crazy so far. So PCE came in at 3.4% versus expected 3.5. Consumer spending came in at 1.2% higher versus 1.8. So this just shows that consumer spending still is slowing down. The GDP somewhat got revised up a little bit, which wasn't nothing too crazy. It's relatively the same. It wasn't really much of a change. Um, Jobs claims are still going higher, which is what pretty much we've been kind of expecting. It shows that even though the economy is weakening, it's not drastically falling off so fast to where like the Fed is gonna have to like completely just step in right away. So we just gotta kind of see how the market decides to deal with that because the overall that news is somewhat like neutral with everything. Pull this back up. So yeah, that news is pretty much neutral. So I believe the market is gonna take a couple minutes for it to digest, but there really hasn't shown. So at least so far, there hasn't been any negative like reaction to that because they're pretty much starting to have these things priced in as far as that the Fed is not going to cut until a later time. All right. So here we go. But yeah, that's Tesla that we looked at before. And then, of course, one thing we got to pay attention to is the VIX. And this is the volatility index. It's also kind of like people like to say the fear index. And one thing I paid attention to is that even though we were falling these last couple of days, that we were going into a demand zone for the VIX. And that's basically an area where we typically go to where buyers typically step in. So like right here previously, this is back in March. We saw buyers stepped in this area before the VIX headed back up. This is the same thing that's happened in this area in May, and now we retreated to this area again yesterday. Yeah, on yesterday, and we started to bounce back up, and that's something to be aware of because usually when this happens, we typically see that the market kind of pulls back a little bit, but roughly it doesn't really happen. So that's been pretty good. But it's just something to pay attention to because if we didn't have a catalyst at all, and this happened, we will eventually see the market kind of like slow down and weaken. We already seen it kind of weak these last couple of days. It didn't really do too much, nothing crazy. That's definitely something else to pay attention to because if this starts picking up and really starts to push back towards, especially towards like $20 or above, that's when you start to see some weakness. Sorry guys, hold on. There you go. Take a look at Bitcoin. I would say one thing that's definitely been helping me over this time is my system that I built. I basically built a trading assistant that helps that kind of brings all the news and all like the option flows together. Like it sees the institutional option flow and it also sees like the regular option flow, like what contracts are heating up. And that really helps a lot. So a lot of times if you're in my Discord, I made it free for everybody right now. You just ask it a question. I call it Coach Next. You ask it a question about as far as like what's going on in the market, and it'll give you a quick little breakdown. Right now, I'm actually in the middle of doing some upgrades to it, so it's been pretty cool. I like it. I definitely say definitely hop in my Discord and check it out. It's free. It's a good tool to have instead of you having to search for like 50 different news reports and indicators. It brings it all together for you pretty quickly. So this is Bitcoin we've been looking at. Um, Bitcoin is still overall pretty bullish, but it's been having a few things, a few indicators that have shown it to be somewhat bearish in the short term, which hasn't been anything too out of the ordinary. So typically, after we reach a new all-time high, that's typically when we see some type of drawdown. And you saw that as we pushed on Thursday, we reached up to 112,000. As soon as that happened, we see this large sell off, and those really a lot of just like automatic like trigger orders because it was like a it's like it's pre-planned areas that people plan to take profit at. And we try to ride back up, but we're obviously in a supply zone. And what I mean by that is that a supply zone is, think about it, this is where there's a lot of supply, and so that's typically where when there's a lot of supply in any business, price tends to drop, right? And you can even see in some of these wicks that are happening right here. And think of it, I always say wicks, I think about them as if someone is throwing like a ball at a wall, like really hard. It hits this area and it bounces back pretty strongly. And that's the same thing that's kind of going on that we have on the top here. So this little area right here is showing to be a supply zone. So I'm kind of like mark it out like this, because that's the thing about support and resistance, is that there are like key psychological levels, like price points, but they're more of zones than they are of just one specific price. And when you understand these supply and demand zones, you can understand that how price can go to a certain price or a little bit past it and still reject. A lot of times someone will tell you like, oh, if it goes to this specific number, then it's gonna go crazy, and it tends not to do that. Or they'll say it's gonna reject it, and it won't do that either. When you understand these zones, you can really mark out what area that needs to get through to actually really take off or to actually fully break down. And you see now I kind of highlighted with a red mark essentially. So you see it's gone to this area, and that's when we start to see the wick offs. It's still bullish. Start to see some of the wick offs over here, and then we see this large dropout out of the supply zone. It touches the EMA, which it has support on, which is this is like a good bullish indicator. It tries this area again, but we see we have this large wick off again. Let me see if I can draw it for you guys. Oh no, it's not good highlight. That look kind of trash. Hold on. Let me see if I found my marker. But I believe you guys can see it. But we have this large wick off area. As soon as we test the supply zone once more, touch back down to EMA and so forth. You kind of keep seeing it happening. And the longer that we stay below the supply zone and we don't break above it, that's more weakness that we have overall in the market. I mean, not the market, on this stock, which, well, it's not stock, it's crypto, it's Bitcoin. But the same concepts apply in all of the stocks, honestly. And so now we're in this place where we're just consolidating, and we're gonna be looking for a move to a first things first, especially let me go down to the 4 hour time frame. To really get going, we really have to break back above this 110K level. The supply zone starts around at 109, 500, 109K 500, but really you see like around 110K, which is where we see these two tops at. This is really where we start to see that weakness step in. Excuse me. So first things first, we need to get back above 100, 110K, and then we can start pushing back towards 112. And then after that, I have a target towards like 116K and 120. And that's very short term. That can happen very quickly. But overall, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin. I will say though, if we do not break above this soon and continue to consolidate, I could see us having a slow, like a slow bleed, where we just completely just kind of fade off a little bit for the next few weeks. Um, but Bitcoin overall is still bullish. We're on a 2-1 on the weekly, which essentially this just means that price is inside the basically inside the previous high or low of the previous candle. So this previous quarter, I mean this previous week, which is just consolidation. That's just saying that we're consolidating, which we are obviously can see that when we went down on a smaller time frame. So that's basically what I'm watching with Bitcoin. What I will look for though, if I wouldn't give more, I wouldn't really get like short term bearish on Bitcoin until we start breaking below this low of this indicator. I mean, the low of this bar right here. So that puts us a little bit below 107K. So it's like 106,800. I'm gonna just mark out on mine so you can kind of visually see. So once we start breaking below here, that's when you start to get a little more short-term bearish on Bitcoin because we're seeing that we're breaking new lows. And then at that point, we'll start targeting the previous low, which is all the way down to 102K, right? So that's what I'll be looking for on Bitcoin. And like again, I said, I want to see us back above 110, which actually just lines up perfectly right here. It's 110, about 700. Once we break above this when we can start seeing more bullish momentum on Bitcoin. And we go down the smaller time frames, you also can see that as well. But this kind of is just a wait and see, and also just pay attention to the volume that's happening with Bitcoin, where buyers and sellers are stepping in at. Um, Overall, I'm still very bullish on Bitcoin, but we'll see until we get something different. I'm pretty just cautiously bullish overall. Long term, I'm super bullish. Another major one to check out is Nvidia. This NVDA, and they just had earnings yesterday. So yeah, and actually played this leading up to this week. I mean, leading up to their earnings. I played it through one of the ETFs, one of the chip ETFs. It's called Soxl. It's SOXL. But basically, what I did with the Nvidia, I didn't hold overnight just because I've been burned playing earnings. We're in this era where you can have good earnings and the stock will still like drop down like crazy. But that didn't happen. And then plus you can just get burned out by theta, which is just like time decay. Um, you can get burned out by theta, or you just get an IV crush. It's basically like the implied volatility. So when apply leading up to earnings, a lot of times you see this thing called implied volatility, where it's just like the expected price for it to move is getting priced into the option, and that basically makes the option more expensive at that point in time. So after we have this huge catalyst, usually this implied volatility drops down significantly, which basically takes a lot of the pricing out of the option itself. So whether you're playing calls or puts, unless we just move pretty significantly, you still can lose money even in the right direction. So I just played it safe and just stay out of it. I played the little run up that we have from here, which is about like around like the 130 up to about what about like 135 ish, something like that. So now we'll go down to our 4 hour time frame, and this is the thing where I was talking about where we would step in and we would mark out our pre-market highs and pre-market lows, because as you can see, the 4 hour time frame is typically my trigger, and that will be down here, right? Which would be 137.25. So we went above 137.25. That would trigger my calls. If we went below 134.79, that would trigger my puts. But in situations like these where earnings happens or some overnight catalyst, you see that we've already triggered to the upside in pre-market. And this is that perfect time where I tell you that you need to turn on your extended trading hours. So this is where we go down to our 15-minute time frame. Some people do a 30-minute, but I go to 15-minute and then I mark out the pre-market high and the pre-market low, because this is what it's showing you is resistance even in pre-market, and this could stay true during the market hours. So I'm put it like right above, which is around like 143. This pre-market high, and then the pre-market low is like about around there, around 140. So now when we go back to regular, since we know we already triggered this on the 4 hour time frame, what we're going to look for when the market does open up is on the 15-minute time frame. You see, we already marked out this previous high, this pre-market high and this pre-market low. When we have a break above this or below this, that's what we use as our trigger to enter calls or enter into puts. And you can see it like, so if we break out this 15-minute time frame, let's first 15 minutes plays out, we see that we're still bullish, and so then we can start targeting 145, 150, and so on after that break. And so with this one, we break down below, we know that we're starting to lead down to a gap fill, which is fill this gap, down, which will be next support will be around like 137, and we'll go all the way down to about 135 again. So that's how I'm going to be playing in video when the market does open. So mark out your high, your pre-market high, pre-market low. You go on your 15-minute time frame and you go from there, and just look for that break. Another stock that's on my watch list. I really like. I called this out yesterday. If you was in the chat, is you. Like that's just the ticker symbol, just you. And you might not see. Let me see if I can pull this all the way over. But you ran like 12.5% yesterday. It was crazy. I don't say I caught on a little late to it, but I was just kind of like scrolling through like some of my watch lists. And first things first, I saw was let me see, this is inverse head and shoulders pattern we had going on. All right, yeah. So let me change this color. There you go. So right here, we see we have, this is like a shoulder. Right here we have head, then another shoulder. Yeah, I'm gonna switch this to on like this one actually. There you go. Just marking out the head and shoulders on this. And this is a bullish setup. This is the inverse head and shoulders. So when you see the regular head and shoulders, that's typically like a bearish pattern. So on the opposite, of course, is bullish. And basically, this gives you like a small low, a new little low, and then you kind of pull back up here. But what you check for is that you have this like they call it the neckline. It's about right here. It's kind of area that we've gone to, and where it basically has like resistance at. So like about right here, testing it right here and right here. There's like our neckline, and basically when you break above the neckline is that's when you typically enter for playing calls, right? And how you measure that typically is the distance from the neckline to the bottom of the head, as far as what your price target will be. But you, even on a smaller time frame, go down to the 4 hour. It had a really, really nice setup. Let me go down to 15 minutes so you can see it. But I just saw a lot of momentum pushing with you, and we end up running. I waited till it got to about. I already kind of caught it kind of late, so I was waiting until it was like 23.75 was like my trigger for it, and I was looking at the $25 calls for the June 20th expiration, but it still ended up like just pushing pretty significantly. Like we went to a high of what was this? I want to say it hit $25 if I'm not mistaken. Just give me. Yo, we went to 25.33. So we went to 25.33 before we saw any type of resistance, and it kind of cooled off a little bit. But I still really like this. This U still has a lot of room it can run to. I'm gonna mark this out. Give you my price target on U. Sorry guys, hold on. Got a message. Here, delete this. Clean this up a little bit. Get this back in the frame. Seriously, you go from the lowest point of the head to the neckline. It's about right here. So I'm gonna take that. Just kind of set this right on top. So it lines up about that's about $35. That's like a $10 move. That's pretty insane, honestly. All this inverse head and shoulders. But even on the bigger time frame, we still have a nice like reversal pattern setting up for you. Here, this is on the weekly. Make this. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions at all. So my next target for you, since we touched that $25 mark, I want to go back to that. I want to see a break above $25, and then after that, mark this out real quick. Then after that, that's when I'll start targeting this next area about 28. So I'll be my next target. And basically, what I'm looking at the previous high that it hit before like pulling back. So it'll be about $28, and then I'm going back over here. And then after that, I'll start targeting about $30 and some change. It's really about $30. And of course, this is gonna take some time. U doesn't move too crazy each day, but these are some targets I'm looking at. This is $25, the 28, and then $30. And then we've learned how a stock moves. You notice that a lot of times they move in certain increments. Like Tesla typically moves in like $3 and $5 increments. You we're seeing as moving about like about $2 increments when it does move. I'm talking about throughout the week, not every day, or that'd be kind of crazy. So that's what I'm looking at with you. Um, yeah, this $27, $28 mark is where I can see his next little resistance at. Kind of see face some resistance over in this area. You start entering. So it's like this looks like a good supply zone. Go ahead and mark that out. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at with you. For right now, I'm gonna just set up my alerts to hit on like $25. So when we break above that, that's when I see we'll start having more bullish momentum. So yeah, we want Tesla, we want U. I'm gonna do SPY, and that'll be it for this morning. That's the main thing I'm looking at. You don't have to overtrade any items really. You don't need to overtrade anything. Like you don't have to have 10 different tickers going on. You can have like one or two or five if you can handle that, and just go from there. The sticker symbol SPY. You see, we're at this point where we're like trying to we recovered all like the losses that we had before Trump got into office. But I mean, when Trump first got in office, right now we're like 592 pre-market. So the biggest thing for SPY is gonna be 595 and then the 600 target. That's been a big psychological mark target for us. So that'll be something to check for. I'm looking at the 4 hour time frame. So we already triggered the 4 hour. So I'm going on to the 15 minute. Mark out the high of the 15 minute. Now mark out the low. So this low is looking like around like below 587, and the high is about above 598. Can we up that high? Yeah, about 598, 599. So yeah, 600 is definitely like the target for today if we are bullish. Oh, hold on. Let me mark this up. So yeah, this pre-market low is around like 590, 591. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm looking at for today, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please go ahead and the link is in my bio. I have a link to my free chat. I do a lot of free game. And you also get to check out our new trading assistant. It's free. And you get to ask the questions, kind of help speed up your trading process and make things simple for you. So you don't have to look at 35 different indicators. And, you can we're trying to make trading a lot more efficient and friendly. So go and check it out. Link is in the bio. It's next. If you still can't find it, just hit me up directly and I'll send you the link. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.